If you think being transgender in Hollywood is new, you are wrong. The golden age of Hollywood was full of celebrities who were born male, but later changed to women. Some of them got very popular, but some faded with the history pages as society did not accept them. 1. Christine Jorgensson. Christine Jorgensson was born George William Jorgensson Jr. on May 30th, 1926, in the Bronx, New York. Growing up in a working-class family, she recalled feeling different from an early age, experiencing a sense of misalignment with her assigned male identity. As a teenager, she was described by others as quiet and introspective, more inclined toward creative pursuits and introspection than stereotypically masculine pastimes. After graduating high school in 1945, she was drafted into the U.S. Army near the end of World War II, a period that would shape her self-understanding, but also deepen her sense of gender incongruence. Shortly after her discharge from the military, Jorgensson began researching the possibilities of hormone therapy and gender confirmation surgery. At the time, such procedures were extremely rare and not readily available in the U.S. She learned about emerging research in Europe, particularly in Denmark, where Dr. Christian Hamburger was involved in groundbreaking work in endocrinology. In 1950, Jorgensson traveled to Copenhagen. Over a span of months, she underwent a series of procedures involving hormone treatments and eventually surgeries, which included what we now label gender confirmation surgeries. This journey was transformative not only for Jorgensson herself, but for public awareness worldwide. Upon her return to the United States in 1952, the press picked up her story, and headlines blared about the ex-GI becomes blonde beauty. The public was simultaneously fascinated and scandalized by the idea that a former soldier had so thoroughly remade her body and identity. Christine Jorgensson was thrust into a celebrity spotlight neither she nor the American public had ever experienced. She was effectively one of the first trans women to step forward into mainstream media coverage. Talk shows clamored to book her. She gave interviews about her surgical journey, her hormone treatments, and her sense of identity, often framed in sensational language by interviewers. Despite, or perhaps because of, this sensationalization, Christine carried herself with remarkable poise, demonstrating humor and intelligence in discussions of her life. Throughout the 1950s, she became a fixture in the entertainment circuit, including nightclubs where she performed a cabaret act that combined song, dance, and monologues. She fielded personal questions from the audience about her surgical journey and personal life. While such a format might raise ethical questions today, since she was put in a position to publicly educate or defend her identity, she seized the platform to articulate her experiences and dispel misconceptions. 2. Billy Tipton. Billy Tipton, born Dorothy Lucille Tipton on December 29, 1914, was an American jazz musician who found moderate success during the mid-20th century. Raised in Oklahoma City, Tipton discovered a passion for music in his youth, focusing on piano and saxophone. A complex question remains precisely when Dorothy began living as Billy. However, it is clear that by the time Billy Tipton embarked on a professional music career in the late 1930s and 1940s, he was consistently presenting as a man. Tipton's journey in jazz took him on tour across the country, playing in small clubs, radio broadcasts, and dance halls. The mid-century jazz scene was far from glamorous for traveling musicians. Pay was modest, and conditions were hardscrabble. Nonetheless, Billy Tipton managed to cultivate a reputation as a talented pianist and bandleader, fronting the Billy Tipton Trio in the 1950s. Tipton's band specialized in standards and swing tunes that appealed to mainstream audiences. He recorded a series of small label albums, which found moderate local success. Because jazz was male-dominated, being accepted as a male musician might have opened more doors for Tipton. It also shielded him from the prejudice a woman would face in that era, especially a woman who did not conform to feminine expectations. Throughout his adult life, Billy Tipton maintained close relationships with female partners, often explaining that he needed to bandage his chest or maintain strict privacy due to injuries from a car accident or other plausible stories. He was known as a modest and private individual, rarely allowing medical examinations or public glimpses into his personal life. This secrecy extended until his death in 1989, when emergency medical personnel discovered that Tipton was assigned female at birth a fact unknown even to his adopted children and last partner. Kitty Kelly, the posthumous revelation sent shockwaves through the media. Headlines and talk shows examined Tipton's life, some with empathy and others veering towards sensationalism. Tipton's story has since become a powerful case study in transgender history, illustrating the lengths to which an individual might go to live a life aligned with their gender identity during a time of widespread intolerance. Billy Tipton's legacy lives on through jazz recordings and the broader narrative about a transgender man living an otherwise ordinary male life in mid-century America. The subterfuge was a survival strategy as well as a personal affirmation of identity. While Billy Tipton did not publicly identify as transgender, language at the time was different, and he carefully guarded his private life. Many modern scholars and activists regard him as a trans-masculine figure. It is important to note that Tipton's life, discovered posthumously, fueled discussions on privacy, identity, and the complexities of living authentically in an era rife with discrimination. Third Virginia Prince. Virginia Charles Prince was born Arnold Lohman on November 23, 1912, in Los Angeles, California. From an early age, Prince displayed an interest in women's clothing. However, the ways in which this interest manifested and the vocabulary she used to describe it would evolve dramatically over the course of her life. Prince attended the University of California, San Francisco, and received a PhD in pharmacology in 1939. During these years, she privately explored wearing feminine attire. She would later write that this was both an expression of who she felt herself to be and a form of self-actualization. Virginia Prince's significance in transgender history, and more specifically in the domain of cross-dressing or transvestism, as the term was used back then, stems primarily from her activism and publishing efforts. In 1960, she began publishing Transvestia, a magazine dedicated to discussions about cross-dressing, gender expression, and experiences outside the traditional male-female binary. While she initially used the term transvestite to describe herself and her readers, Prince's self-identification as a heterosexual crossdresser evolved into a more nuanced understanding of gender identity in later years. Prince was instrumental in organizing one of the earliest social and support networks for individuals assigned male at birth who found fulfillment in wearing women's clothing. At a time when cross-dressing was criminalized in many jurisdictions and could lead to public shaming, job loss, or institutionalization, Prince's communities allowed members to gather, share stories, and offer mutual support in private, safe settings. Although there is debate about the extent to which Virginia Prince identified fully as a transgender woman, by the 1960s and 1970s, she did live full-time as female and used the name Virginia. She was, however, notable for distinguishing herself from other transsexual women who pursued surgery. Prince did not strongly advocate for surgical intervention, often stressing social and psychological aspects of gender over medical procedures. Some modern activists have critiqued her positions as exclusionary because she distanced herself from those who identified as homosexual or from those who fully transitioned medically, claiming a distinctly heterosexual cross-dresser niche. Yet her organizing efforts formed the bedrock of early transvestite support in the U.S., eventually contributing to the broader tapestry of transgender advocacy. Virginia Prince lived to the remarkable age of 96, passing away in 2009. Despite controversies surrounding her personal views, which were sometimes criticized as conservative or dismissive toward other trans identities, she remains a pioneering figure in forming early transgender discourse. Her newsletters, publications, and support groups helped lay an essential foundation for later trans activism, including the push for recognition of diverse gender identities within and beyond heterosexual cross-dressing communities. Her story underscores the complexity of trans identity and how it was navigated before a cohesive movement or shared language truly coalesced in the late 20th century. She grew up in a working-class environment, facing challenges unlike many children during wartime Britain. From an early age, she was aware of feeling more aligned with a feminine identity. Yet, given the societal constraints of the 1940s and 1950s England, she had nowhere to express this publicly. In her late teens, Ashley joined the Merchant Navy, hoping to find a different life path. However, feelings of depression and suicide attempts led her to seek ways to affirm her true self. She eventually found community among drag performers and cabaret artists in Paris. In the late 1950s, after discovering the possibilities of gender confirmation surgery, she traveled to Casablanca, Morocco, where Dr. Georges Bureau had pioneered methods for what is now known as vaginoplasty. After a successful operation, George Jameson became April Ashley, living fully as a woman from that point onward. Ashley's striking beauty and elegance caught the attention of the fashion world. She was photographed for Vogue and other magazines, rapidly becoming a sought-after model in the early 1960s. However, her rise to fame came at a price when a friend sold her story to the press. British tabloids ran sensational headlines about her transition. She was outed publicly, which led to the loss of modeling contracts and significant personal strain. In 1963, April Ashley married Arthur Corbett, who was part of the British aristocracy. When their relationship soured, Corbett sought an annulment on the basis that Ashley had been born male. The resulting case, Corbett versus Corbett, became a landmark legal precedent in the UK, ruling that a person's legal sex was determined by their sex assigned at birth, effectively denying Ashley legal recognition as a woman. This verdict set back trans rights in the UK for decades, until the Gender Recognition Act of 2004 overturned that stance. Despite the personal tragedies and hardships she endured, losing her modeling career, facing legal discrimination, and struggling financially, April Ashley remained an influential figure. In later years, she became more vocal in advocating for transgender issues and was eventually recognized for her trailblazing role. In 2012, she was awarded the Member of the Order of the British Empire for her activism. Her life story remains a testament to resilience. She paved the way for more open discussions of transgender identity in the UK fashion industry and beyond. April Ashley passed away in December 2021, leaving behind a legacy of courage in the face of intense social stigma. 5. Caroline Casi. Caroline Casi, also known by her modeling name Tula, was born Barry Kenneth Casi in Brook, Norfolk, England, on August 31, 1954. As a child, Casi felt profoundly uncomfortable with her assigned male identity, often preferring feminine clothes and play. She underwent medical evaluations as a teenager, revealing a chromosomal variation, sometimes associated with Klinefelter syndrome. These physical predispositions led to her seeking hormone therapy while still quite young. By her late teens, Casi began hormone treatment, which allowed her to develop a more traditionally feminine appearance. She adopted the name Caroline and moved to London, where she embarked on a modeling career. The 1970s and 1980s saw Casi rising in prominence. She worked for various fashion agencies and even appeared in British tabloid spreads. While her transition was not entirely secret, it was not mainstream public knowledge, and she feared that widespread disclosure would end her career. In 1981, Caroline landed a small role in the James Bond film For Your Eyes Only, briefly appearing as one of the poolside beauties. Though the role was minor, it placed her firmly in the public eye. She also posed for Playboy, making her one of the first trans women to be featured in that publication. Shortly after her Bond appearance, a tabloid outed Casi, revealing that she was born a boy. This revelation led to career setbacks, much like April Ashley experienced. Determined to regain her dignity and fight for legal recognition, Casi took her case to court in the United Kingdom, seeking to be recognized as female for marriage and legal documents. The case drew parallels with April Ashley's earlier legal tribulations. Caroline Casi authored an autobiography, My Story, in which she recounted her life's journey, her transition, and her struggles for legal recognition in the UK. She re-released it later under the title My Story, The Transsexual Who Changed Show Business. Although the public reaction during the 1980s was a mixture of fascination and transphobia, Casi's willingness to speak openly about her life significantly contributed to public awareness of transgender experiences. Over time, her story became emblematic of the fight for trans women to claim their identities in mainstream entertainment and to enjoy the same legal rights as others. Her presence in high-profile modeling campaigns and mainstream media appearances also helped normalize trans identities for many who might never have encountered them otherwise. Sex, Lily Elbe Einar Wegener. Lily Elbe, born Einar Magnus Andreas Wegener in Denmark, was a painter and one of the earliest known recipients of gender confirmation surgery. Her life story largely unfolded in Europe, far from the Hollywood spotlight, yet she was a contemporary of the early Golden Age era. Elby's marriage to Gerda Wegener, another accomplished artist, led to collaborative art projects. Einar occasionally posed in women's clothing for Gerda's paintings, gradually crystallizing Einar's self-awareness of a feminine identity. In 1930, Lily Elby went to Germany to undergo the first series of experimental surgeries under Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld's guidance at the Institute for Sexual Wissenschaft. She received multiple procedures that were groundbreaking for the time. This was decades before Christine Jorgensson, and medical knowledge was limited, leading to dangerous operations. Tragically, complications arose from a final surgery involving a transplanted uterus, and Elby died in 1931. Elby's diaries and letters were published posthumously, eventually fictionalized in the 2000 novel The Danish Girl, which was adapted into a 2015 film. While that adaptation took creative liberties, it brought global awareness to Lily Elby's historical significance as a pioneer. She is often cited as a direct predecessor to all who followed in seeking surgical affirmation. Her life intersected with the Golden Age in that it preceded and foreshadowed the wave of surgeries and transitions that became more widely discussed decades later. 7th, Raymond Burr. Raymond William Stacey Burr was a Canadian-born actor who rose to fame as the lead character in the legal drama Perry Mason and later in Ironside. He became emblematic of mid-century TV masculinity, playing imposing, authoritative characters. Burr had a booming voice, a commanding presence, and an aura that seemed to define conservative masculinity on screen. In the years after his death, various rumors emerged about Burr's personal life. Some accounts suggested he was quietly gay. Indeed, more evidence supports he may have had male partners. The additional rumor that he might have been transgender or gender fluid is far less substantiated. These stories often arise from the fact that Burr was intensely private and changed details about his biography, claiming marriages that may not have happened or children that may not have existed. In the vacuum of real information, speculation flourished. No credible documentation indicates that Raymond Burr ever identified as transgender or took steps to transition to female. The suggestions of a secret female identity remain purely in the realm of rumor and unverified allegations. Nevertheless, certain tabloid or internet sources occasionally place Burr's name on lists of secretly trans Golden Age celebrities. Mainstream historians typically dismiss these claims due to a lack of evidence. Nevertheless, Burr's name remains a footnote in discussions about how hush-hush Hollywood was regarding any form of LGBTQ+ identity. 8th, Leverne Cummings. Leverne Cummings is a relatively obscure figure about whom historical documentation is scant. Born Charles Leverne Cummings in 1923, she apparently had minor roles in Hollywood films in the 1940s before transitioning to the 1950s. Some unverified sources mention that she was under contract for a short time, but never rose to major stardom. The narrative goes that Cummings left mainstream Hollywood after transitioning, given the near impossibility of continuing a film career as a known trans woman in the 1950s. She may have pursued nightclubs and live performance circuits, a path similar to Christine Jorgensson's. Documentation of these performances is spotty. Small pieces can be found in regional newspapers referencing appearances by a Laverne Cummings. The rest of her life story remains largely uncharted. While not a household name, Laverne Cummings is often cited in conversation as an early Hollywood figure who transitioned. Her star faded long before the modern wave of trans recognition, but she remains a historical footnote, pointing to the possibility that there were indeed individuals navigating the male-to-female transition within or near the Golden Age industry. 9. Candy Darling. Candy Darling was born James Lawrence Slattery on November 24, 1944. She became part of Andy Warhol's circle of New York City artists, known as Warhol Superstars. Darling had an ethereal, blonde bombshell style reminiscent of old Hollywood icons like Marilyn Monroe and Kim Novak. She appeared in Warhol's avant-garde films, including Flesh and Women and Revolt. Her presence in these works offered a blend of camp, glamour, and a raw aesthetic that challenged the norms of mainstream cinema. Candy Darling identified strongly with femininity from a young age. By her late teens, she was living openly as Candy, and Warhol recognized her star quality. While she never attained mainstream Hollywood success, in the New York underground and queer art scene of the 1960s and early 1970s, she was a legend. Her transition was a subject of fascination for Warhol's crowd, who both celebrated and fetishized her gender identity. Candy's diaries and letters reflect a longing for acceptance and a desire to be recognized as a legitimate actress in big-budget Hollywood films. An aspiration that proved elusive given the era's prejudices. Candy Darling died tragically young, at only 29, from lymphoma. The circumstances of her illness were not directly related to her transition or hormone therapy, but her passing cut short a life that might have contributed even more to transgender visibility in pop culture. She remains an icon in queer history, immortalized in Lou Reed's song Walk on the Wild Side, and in countless Warhol retrospectives. Her story underscores the tension between the desire for mainstream acceptance and the reality that for many trans people of her time, acceptance was confined largely to underground or alternative artistic spaces. 10th, Marcia P Johnson, a Black trans woman. Johnson was a central figure in New York's LGBTQ+ community. She played a key role in the Stonewall Uprising of 1969, which catalyzed the modern gay liberation movement. Alongside close friend Sylvia Rivera, she co-founded the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, an organization providing housing, support, and resources for young, homeless trans and queer folks. Marcia was well known in the city's drag scene, performing in local bars and clubs. She had a magnetic, larger-than-life personality, an interplay of warmth, flamboyance, and fierce advocacy that drew people in. She often referred to the P in her name as standing for "pay it no mind," a statement of self-confidence when people questioned her gender expression. Throughout her life, she faced discrimination and poverty, but consistently extended help to those more vulnerable. Marcia P. Johnson was found dead under suspicious circumstances in 1992. Officially ruled a suicide, her death remains a point of contention and sorrow within the community. Johnson's activism is now widely recognized as pivotal in trans and queer rights history. She is celebrated as a visionary figure who, without financial means or formal power, left an indelible mark on the LGBTQ+ movement. Numerous documentaries, murals, and organizations pay homage to her unstoppable spirit and contributions to equity. 11. Bambi Lake, also known as Robert Dwayne Ford, was an influential performer in San Francisco's underground drag and cabaret world, starting in the late 1960s or early 1970s. She was part of the Cockettes, a famed psychedelic drag troupe known for their irreverent, kaleidoscopic stage shows. Bambi's brand of performance was flamboyant, comedic, and at times deeply personal, often referencing her experiences as a transgender woman navigating poverty and life on the fringes. Lake contributed to the shaping of queer entertainment in San Francisco, bridging drag performance, punk aesthetics, and comedic monologues. She published a memoir, The Unsinkable Bambi Lake, which chronicled her experiences in the city's LGBT+ nightlife. For many younger performers, Bambi was an elder stateswoman of trans performance art, demonstrating how individuality and flamboyance could break down social barriers. She continued to perform into her later years, though she experienced health and financial struggles. She remained, however, a symbol of resilience and authenticity in a city that prided itself on progressive values. When she died around 2020, tributes poured in from across the queer performance community, acknowledging her role in forging a path for drag and trans artistry in one of America's most iconic gay capitals. 12th. Sylvia Rivera. Sylvia Rivera was born Ray Rivera in 1951 to a Puerto Rican father and Venezuelan mother. Growing up in New York City, Rivera faced early hardships. She began living on the streets at a young age, finding family among drag queens and trans women in Times Square. Rivera was just 17 or 18 when the Stonewall Uprising took place in June 1969. Yet she became a driving force in those nights of protest and beyond. Rivera is best known for co-founding the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries with Marcia P Johnson, an organization that provided shelter and resources to homeless LGBTQ+ youth, especially trans youth of color. She challenged white, middle-class gay activists who overlooked the most marginalized members of the community: trans women, drag queens, homeless youth, and sex workers. Sylvia's activism continued into the 1970s and beyond. Though she struggled with homelessness and addiction at times, she famously confronted the mainstream gay rights movement for abandoning trans issues after initial gains. When she died in 2002, the trans community recognized her as an uncompromising voice for inclusion. Today, community centers, grants, and awards bear her name, celebrating her commitment to ensuring that the T in LGBTQ+ does not remain silent. 13th, Leah Delaria. Leah Delaria is a bit different from many on this list, in that she is openly lesbian, gender non-conforming, but not a trans woman. Born May 23, 1958, Delaria launched her career in stand-up comedy in the 1980s, becoming one of the first openly gay comics to appear on American television. Known for her brash, quick-witted style, she also built a parallel track as a jazz vocalist, releasing several albums to critical acclaim. Delaria broke into mainstream pop culture with her role as Big Boo on the Netflix series Orange is the New Black, playing a butch lesbian inmate. She also made waves on Broadway, performing in revivals of classic musicals. Though not strictly transgender, her challenge to gender norms and open queerness in the entertainment industry exemplifies expanding acceptance and representation of diverse identities. 14. The Lady Shabi, born Benjamin Edward Knox on March 11, 1957. The Lady Shabi rose to prominence in Savannah, Georgia's drag and gay club circuit. She cultivated a larger-than-life persona, weaving comedy and glamour into her performances. Shabi was not only an entertainer, but also one of the few Black trans drag performers to achieve mainstream name recognition in the South. John Barron's best-selling book, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, featured the Lady Shabi as a real-life personality. When Clint Eastwood directed the film adaptation in 1997, Shabi played herself, capturing on-screen the same vivacity that made her a local star. Her portrayal broke new ground for trans representation in mainstream cinema, especially for a performer who had no illusions about her identity. The Lady Shabi wrote a memoir, Hiding My Candy, and continued performing until her death in 2016 from complications related to pneumonia. She remains a beloved figure in Savannah and beyond, emblematic of the small but crucial openings for trans talent in mainstream entertainment. 15. Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison, born Chloe Anthony Wofford, is best known as one of the most acclaimed novelists in American history, receiving the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1993. She is not transgender, nor is there any record that she identified outside of cisgender womanhood. She is included in the original references because of her exploration of marginalized identities, including intersections of race and gender, in novels like The Bluest Eye, Song of Solomon, and Beloved. While Morrison did not personally transition, her literature challenged rigid norms, sometimes broadening readers' concepts of identity, selfhood, and personhood. 16. Vicky Lahn, born Victor Lahn, was a drag performer and stand-up comic active primarily in Los Angeles during the 1980s and 1990s. Though details of her birth year are unclear, she emerged during a period of heightened LGBT activism and faced the AIDS crisis head-on. She fused comedy with drag pageantry, using biting wit to comment on politics, social conventions, and experiences of the LGBTQ+ community. In her routines, she often challenged audiences to confront their own biases about gender and sexuality. She harnessed humor as a powerful coping mechanism, especially crucial during the 1980s, when the AIDS epidemic ravaged queer communities and demanded a resilience that comedic relief could provide. Locke was also known for charitable performances benefiting AIDS organizations, aligning with broader activist efforts in Los Angeles. Like many drag performers, her role extended beyond mere entertainment. She cultivated community spaces where acceptance could flourish. This activism and comedic presence solidified her reputation as a beloved figure who helped shape LA's queer nightlife culture. 17th, Jackie Shane. Jackie Shane was born in Nashville, Tennessee in 1940, assigned male at birth but living openly as a transgender woman from an early age. She eventually found success in the 1960s Toronto music scene. Shane's dynamic stage presence, powerful singing voice, and flamboyant style made her a star in the local club circuit. She blended R&B, soul, and influences of gospel in her performances, enthralling audiences. One of Jackie Shane's best-known recordings is Any Other Way, often referred to as I'm Your Man by fans who recall its iconic, soul-infused twist on the original William Bell tune. It charted regionally in Canada and cemented her popularity. While she was overshadowed in the US by better-known soul singers, in Toronto, she enjoyed a near-legendary status. Her open trans identity in the 1960s was nothing short of groundbreaking. On stage, she wore makeup, dresses, and declared herself a woman despite a social climate rife with bigotry. Shane withdrew from the public eye in the early 1970s, returning to Nashville to care for her mother. Only in the 2000s did renewed interest in her music lead to reissues of her recordings, culminating in a Grammy-nominated retrospective album entitled Any Other Way. She passed away in 2019, having lived long enough to see her legacy recognized. Jackie Shane's life remains a powerful statement of trans visibility in music history, well before society had the language or acceptance levels we see today. 18. Andrea James. Andrea James, born Andrew James, emerged as a key figure in trans advocacy, film and writing during the 1990s and 2000s. She co-founded Transgender Media, a groundbreaking platform that aimed to educate both the public and the entertainment industry about transgender experiences. With a background in advertising and a passion for media representation, James understood how crucial accurate, respectful depiction was for shaping societal perceptions. Andrea James wore many hats: filmmaker, consultant, writer, and activist. She contributed to various television and film projects, ensuring trans characters and storylines were handled with care. One of her hallmark achievements was co-producing educational materials on transition, voice coaching, and self-acceptance for trans women. She also worked as a consultant on series that included trans characters, pushing for authenticity in casting and storytelling. By combining advocacy with tangible media production, Andrea James carved a niche that bridged activism and popular culture. Her efforts continue to influence how trans narratives are created and shared, providing resources for new generations of trans storytellers. She helped open doors for more authentic voices to emerge in mainstream media. 19th. Jacqueline Charlotte Dufranoi. Jacqueline Charlotte Dufranoi, famously known as Coccinelle, was born Jacques Charles Dufranoi on August 23, 1931, in Paris, France. She began performing at the Carrousel de Paris, a cabaret venue renowned for its drag and transgender performers, in the mid-1950s. Coccinelle's flair for glamour and star quality led her to become one of Europe's most celebrated trans showgirls. Coccinelle underwent gender confirmation surgery in 1958, performed by Dr. Georges Bourreau in Casablanca, the same surgeon who would later operate on April Ashley. This made her a subject of intense public fascination in France and beyond, as media outlets followed her story closely. She parlayed publicity into further entertainment success, appearing in various European films, including Europa di Notte, which showcased nightclubs and variety acts. Coccinelle married multiple times, challenging French legal definitions of sex and marriage. Her personal life became a point of public debate and occasional controversy. She also devoted time to charitable endeavors, founding Devenir Femme, an organization that offered support and financial assistance to trans women seeking surgery. She passed away in 2006, honored as a trailblazer of trans visibility in European show business.